Welcome to Vinyl Poetry Lounge, where legendary lyrics spark poetic fires. I'm your hostess for the next hour, Jana Lopez. So kick back, relax, and let the words carry you home. Well, hello and welcome to Vinyl Poetry Lounge. I'm your hostess, Jana Lopez, and I'm really grateful to be here with you tonight on this Sunday. Hopefully you're doing something relaxing, fulfilling, engaging, and truly, I can't think of anything more engaging or relaxing than listening to music and talking about poetry. Two of my favorite things. And I am always excited and genuinely thrilled when I have a chance to sit in front of somebody and chat with them about why music, why lyrics, why poetry. So for those that don't know me, I'm Jana Lopez, and I, in my day-to-day world, am the poet in residence at Creighton University School of Medicine. And I have the honor of being one of the first, if not the first in the country, to teach poetry as a form of connection, clarity, empathy, and to help people who deal with really complicated stuff find a way to balance and juggle and navigate complicated emotions through poetry. And so I'm working with doctors, I'm working with faculty, I'm working with students, honor of a lifetime. And I'm also a book coach. I help people start and finish the books of their dreams because I understand how complicated expression can be. I understand how difficult it is to want to express yourself and to be unable to express yourself. And so I've spent my life's work basically helping people learn how to get clear, confident, and connected to their deepest expression, because I believe everybody is entitled to express who they are in the world. And what happens is we end up silencing ourselves out of fear, out of expectation, out of all of those red pens that follow us from high school teachers and into our current living situations. And so I don't think you have to be like somebody who writes every day to be a poet. I think you just have to be a human to be a poet. And I truly do believe that everybody has the capacity for poetry within them. And so I've created Vinyl Poetry Lounge to show you that you can connect to songs that you've known your whole life in new ways. You can listen to the song and reimagine what that song means to you because of the amazing, hidden in plain sight superpower of legendary lyrics. So many great songs, so many beautiful lyrics. And so I'm here to break down songs lyric by lyric, line by line, thought by thought, to help you understand that maybe poetry is not over there somewhere, but it's actually right here for you, here and now, through the music you've already been listening to. So that is my mission. That is the purpose of Vinyl Poetry Lounge. And now you know a little bit more about the why and the how. And so before we get started, my thank you to Jared McMullen, my fabulous producer. And as we move through tonight's workshop, class, lounge, lesson, living room, whatever you want to call it, I look at tonight as like a living, breathing classroom. This is a public service. This is something I do to offer to the community to make sure that everybody has access to education and to poetry. If you feel inclined, contributions of $1, $5, $10, it doesn't matter. All of those contributions do help. And you can go onto my website on janalopez.com under Vinyl Poetry Lounge And there's a place you can leave a tip. It's like a tip jar if you feel so inclined. I greatly appreciate it and could definitely use the support and will make use of your support. So tonight, last week, I did a little bit around the teenage young girl angst around not being seen and getting very confusing messages with I'm Not in Love by 10cc. And this week I decided to pivot and do an entirely different direction. And so I chose a song that I feel really does speak to empowerment, female coming of age, and just general badassery in the world of music and lyrics. And so I chose the Pretenders' Brass in Pocket, a seminal song during a seminal time. And so we are going to break down the lyrics of Brass in Pocket. Now, what is important to think about as we engage with lyrics and poetry and these songs that we've sung hundreds of times without even thinking twice about, is that there's a meaning behind these songs and a context behind these songs. Now, not every poem do I understand, not every song do I understand, but I actually take pleasure in the grappling. And maybe I'm not getting it right, but I think when it comes to songs and poetry, it's what you feel, what you see, what you understand. And so I do share a little bit about the context of when a song was created, why it was created, how a band came up with their name, because it does lend itself to how we experience the music, how we reimagine, reconnect, re-engage with that song. It helps to have some background because it's about context, it's about connection, it's about relationships and relationships to the music, to the song, and of importance, who we were at that time. So let's take a quick look at what was going on in 1979. 1979. So 1979 was a time of big transition. I was 12 years old. And like a lot of kids, girls, I listened to a lot of different music. I would say my listening would have been AM radio, and that would have consisted of a lot of disco, a lot of Donna Summer, some Bee Gees for sure, and a lot of that pop sensibility that was going on in the late 1970s, heading into the early 1980s. But as we all know, as my day glow reflects, something began to shift. Something began to shift in 1979 into 1980s. Punk rock was the beginning of a whole new world and a whole new sensibility. And there were bands that started to come up like the Sex Pistols and the Clash and the Ramones. And the idea around the backlash or the rebellion of punk rock was, instead of being like polished and poppy, it wanted to be more fast and raw and angry. And so punk rock itself, there was a lot of underground clubs when I was growing up in LA that many of my friends and myself would go to check out some of these bands. But punk rock wasn't really radio friendly, like in the long term. So what became was this idea of new wave. And so new wave took the energy of punk rock, but made it artier, smarter, catchier, more music friendly, more radio friendly. And so this made room for bands like the Pretenders, the Talking Heads, Blondie, Elvis Costello, the Cars, and the Police. And of course, this was also the rise of MTV. So it lent itself to very well, actually, to the idea that we could convey this music with these videos that were quirky, fun, and sort of edgy. And so the sound of new wave was cleaner guitars, quirky vocals, and kind of an edgy attitude. And so, of course, the synthesizers, what would the late 70s, early 80s sound be without the synthesizers? And so think Gary Newman, Devo, and the Human League. And so music became a little more electronic, a little edgier, a little more robotic and minimalistic. And then MTV brought together all of those things with the look and the sound and the fashion. And then we got bands like Duran Duran and the Culture Club, which of course were like catchy club tunes that on a Saturday in LA when they had those young teenage club discos that you could go to. Yes, they had them when I was growing up. And so things changed. Things changed emotionally. The sentiment around music began to change. And so with these changes came this idea. Disco was like, let's dance together, where new wave was like, let's dance while emotionally confused, wearing a trench coat and a high ponytail. And lots of pearls, lots of baubles, right? Lots of incremental accoutrement that sort of polished the finished look of being edgy yet poppy. And so there were some artists during that time that bridged both worlds, like David Bowie, the Talking Heads, the B-52s, and of course, the Pretenders. The Pretenders were so critical to the sound and the shift from one world, one decade into the next. We're talking about ushering an entire decade of sound and sentiment. So let's take a look at one of those photos of the kids hanging out, punk rock, 1980s. There we go. There it is. So now I relate to this. This is an image of like friends and hair and jewels and baubles and hanging out. And this is a very quintessential 1980s, early 80s look. I could be in that photo. And so there was a lot of edge. There was a lot of edge to this. Chrissie Hynde, of course, Debbie Harry, Joan Jett, Madonna, Cyndi Lauper, Annie Lennox, Pat Benatar. These were some of the women that started to come up during that time, talk about independence, talk about freedom, talk about autonomy. And I feel like when I think back to this time of the late 1970s, early 1980s, Chrissie Hynde to me represented the transition of my life of that time. I went from being sort of naive and sentimental into, you know what? I want to be a little bit of a badass. And so how can I do that in a way that is expressive, powerful, and yet independent and edgy and artistic? So Chrissie Hynde was like tough and emotionally complex. She represented this unapologetically cool and not manufactured pop. And so she really, I think, if you look at this picture, it says a lot about, except for the cigarette, which I can relate to too at that time. But Chrissie Hynde was like taking life into her own terms and into her own way and into her own swagger. She just looks really badass here. And so before forming the band, she was an American expat from Akron, Ohio, immersed in the London punk wave scene. And she was hanging around musicians who became part of that moment. And so she worked at a famed punk shop called Sex. She wrote music criticism for publications. She was deeply embedded in the new wave London scene. And as she was gallivanting around, she was like, would cross paths with people from the Clash and the Sex Pistols. And so she was really immersing herself into that scene. And she was determined to form her own band. So she had a label connection to Real Records, and she placed an ad seeking musicians to join her band. And so this brought in James Honeymoon Scott, a guitarist who had melodic brilliance and was influenced by the Beatles and the Kinks. Peter Frandon, who was tough and charismatic, a bassist with strong R&B influences under his belt. And then Martin Chambers, who was like this powerhouse of a drummer, also from the area. And so Chrissie Hynde formed this band in London in 1978. And they considered all kinds of names, as you can imagine. But the Pretenders got their name from The Great Pretender, the 1955 hit by the Platters. And they loved that this name mirrored the mystery and the iconic sensibility. It was a little bit glamorous. And so it really suited Chrissie Hynde's songwriting. And it really was a perfectly given name that gave bravado and vulnerability and edginess. And so the song, The Great Pretender, was about hiding true feelings behind a facade. And so together, these members brought something really unique to the band. They had their edginess and their sharp songwriting. So Chrissie Hynde was all about cool detachment and punk credibility. James Honeymoon Scott was like the melodic guitar sophistication. Peter Frandon was about swagger and groove, and Martin Chambers was all about like this inventive drumming. And they really weren't like pure punk, which I think is why they're the quintessential new wave band, because they had classic pop hooks and R&B sound and a punk edge. And so this combined gave them a very unique sound for the time. Now, I don't know about you, but this album, I listened to it in prep for the show. And there are so many good songs on this album. So many good songs. Precious, The Phone Call, Up the Neck, Tattooed Love Boys, The Wait, Stop Your Sobbing, Mystery Achievement. And so I'm going to strongly invite you, if you've not listened to this album recently, to take a few minutes, put it on, and just completely jam out to the entirety of this really incredible work of art. This album is incredible. Takes you up, takes you down, it takes you all the way around. And so this album was recorded in late 1979, and the producer was Chris Thomas, who worked with the Sex Pistols, Roxy Music, and the Beatles, which is interesting because I can kind of hear a little bit of all of that in this album. It was released in the United States in March of 1980. And so Brass in Pocket was not really their first choice. This was not the first choice for being released as a single. Chrissie Hynde didn't really think much of this song initially, and she didn't want it as the defining single, but yet it became their biggest hit and their biggest early hit. And this was the song that catapulted them from punk into new wave. And so the versatility of their music really is what got them to stand out. And so another thing about this album, which makes it so important, is that the original lineup was tragically short-lived. James Honeymoon Scott died in 1982, as did Pete Farndon. He died in 1983. So this really does give a place and a time for these people to come together to have created something magnificent that will live on for generations to come. So I was curious about Brass in Pocket because I've sung this song so many times. I'm like, what does that mean? What is Brass in Pocket? Of course, my little jokey, like 13-year-old mind would have all kinds of wandering thoughts about what Brass in Pocket would mean. But it's important we're setting the record somewhat straight, at least from an interpretive standpoint. So brass is an old British slang for money. Brass in pocket means having money in your pocket, having resources, having something to bring to the table. But in the song, it's got like more metaphor to it. Brass in pocket. I've got my assets. I'm equipped. I am ready. And so to me, this song is about the reclamation of youth and energy and independence and autonomy and swagger. And so Chrissie Hynde originally thought the song was kind of silly, but they took some lyrics that they tossed around from Martin Chambers, had a very unique vocabulary, like Detroit leaning, new skank, and brass in pocket. You know, he would use that term. And so they thought that it would be fun and kitschy to create a song that embraced this London kind of swagger and sensibility and cheekiness. So let's take a first look at Brass in Pocket by The Pretenders, written by Chrissie Hynde. All right, so the song starts off, got brass in pocket. I got my assets, baby. I got my money in my pocket. I've got my confidence. Got bottle. I'm going to use it. And that can be bottle of lightning, bottle of magic, bottle of whiskey. But either way, she's going to use it. And it's interesting. She says, intention. I feel inventive. That's such an amazing line. Intention, I feel inventive. She's saying after I'm going to use it. The intention is there. I'm going to be clear, committed to the cause. I feel inventive. And I'm going to make you notice. I'm going to be so confident, so direct, so clear in my confidence and connection and intention that you are going to be unable to not notice. You're going to notice, and this is me stepping into my power, which I love, right? This is the time where women of this, and from the 70s going into the 80s, were all about the claiming and the autonomy and the courage and the, we'll just say brassiness, because I like that word. All right, so what do you think of this first paragraph? I would love to know in the comments where you are coming in from and what you think about intention. I'll say hello to Patty. I see you. Hello. What do you think about having intention and declaring it? What do you think about having that power and declaring it and saying, I'm going to use it and I'm going to make you notice? It's so different from last week's, from I'm not in love to where she's hanging around waiting. This is all about declaration. And I love that women had that capacity to step into their power. And I remember during that time, Pat Benatar, Debbie Harry, Annie Lennox, these were women that were declaring their power. All right, so after we're going to make you notice, we're going to go into the next clip. God, she's so cool. I'm totally seeing her. I just totally want to be her. I want to be her. So here she says, got motion, restrained emotion. So she's moving towards the direction of intention and being noticed. Restrained emotion. She's saying, I am going to be cool. I am going to be calm. I am going to be collected. And I've been driving. I'm in the driver's seat, Detroit leaning. And what that means to me is like, I'm going to go to where the cool kids hang out. I'm going to kind of make my way towards where the action is. I'm heading in that direction. And I don't need a reason. I've got motion. And you know what? It just seems so pleasing. And I love this. Chrissie Hynde is declaring, I don't need a reason. It just seems so pleasing. I am going to do what I want. And you know what? I'm going to make you notice. So she's very clear in this. There's a lot of declaration here. I've got restrained emotion. I'm cool and I'm calm and I'm driving and I'm going to where the cool kids are. And I don't need a reason. It just seems like it's something I want to do. And so I love the liberation in this line. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, so there's a lot going on in this little segment. I'm going to use my arms, going to use my legs, going to use my style, going to use my sidestep, going to use my fingers, going to use my imagination. And so what this looks like to me is like the inventory of all of the assets that she's got to empower herself. So her arms are the things that she can hold herself up with. She can embrace herself with. She can make declarations with. Her legs are the things that help her walk, help carry her, help keep her upright. Her style is the thing that defines her and separates her. And her sidestep, to me, that is about getting out of the way when you recognize something's going down that you do not want to be part of, that you can sidestep the obstacles. That's what that says to me. And my fingers, like being able to play an instrument, the guitar, the keyboards, to use her fingers for music, for notes. And, you know, I love this line so much. Going to use my imagination. That is a very poetic line. You don't expect to hear that in a new wave song necessarily, but in the context of this song, she's got all these very tangible things. And aside from it all, her sidestep is her intuition. Her imagination is her capacity to create and dream and think bigger than what's in front of her, bigger than what's expected of her. And so I love this stanza because to me, this is really the crux of where the song becomes declarative and autonomous and like taking inventory of all of the things that make her fabulous and the capacity to be noticed, right? The capacity to be noticed. All of her is coming to the table. So what do you think about that paragraph? Drop me some comments and let me know what you think of all of those things that she has in her power to be noticed. I just love that stanza. It has so much power to it. All right, so let's go on to the next portion of this song. All right, so this is so fantastic because basically she's being very clear that there is nobody else here like me. And, you know, to be able to say that out loud, to say I'm special, so special. I mean, I don't know that I've ever said those words out loud about myself. That I do know there is nobody like me. I don't know that I would necessarily declare that I'm special, so special. Unfortunately, it's gotten negative connotations if you were to declare yourself as special. But you know, 1980, to be able to say that as a woman and to have that kind of confidence and to be able to sing about it really is encouraging and inspiring. And so if she has the intention and there's somebody she's interested in and somebody she wants to connect with, and she's saying, you know what, I want some of your attention, give it to me. I think this really does a lot for building confidence. And remember, at this time, I'm a 13-year-old girl. So I think it made me feel subconsciously that it was okay to have something you want, have something you want to declare you want, and to go for it without apology, without being sorry, without saying you're sorry for wanting what you want and going after what you want. And so just pure empowerment, pure confidence. I love it so much. All right, let's go to the next one. Got something. When can I tell? Gonna make you notice. All right. So again, she's going back to the idea of her swagger, leaning into her Detroit leaning, going where the cool kids are. That she's got rhythm. I can't miss a beat. I can't miss a beat. I am so on fire that I cannot miss a beat. Got new skank, it's so reet. So this was one of the sayings that she was describing that Chambers would talk about a lot. That what do these words even mean? Got new skank, it's so reet. So to me, this means I got like a new smell, a new aroma, a new way of just being with myself, and it's so reach. And to me, that's like crossing the words neat and real. And so that's how I interpret it, is like a cross between those two words, creating a single word. I'm so next level. I'm reet. I'm real and I'm neat. I'm reet. And I do that all the time when I'm creating words. And it doesn't matter if this is what's meant or not. This is what I'm interpreting it. And it makes sense to me given the context of the song. But I love that it's fun and cheeky and courageous and confident, that she's got new skank, and it is so reach. Got something, I'm winking at you. I got something, I'm winking at you. And so she's saying, I'm showing up into this space. I've got my confidence. Here I am, and I am going to let you know. And you can't help but notice. So think about it. Everything up until this part of the song, it's about all the things that she has, that she's taking ownership of, that she is not apologizing for, or that she is not compromising on, and that she's going to make sure to let the world know. And you know what? Now that I say that out loud, this could also be the representation of how we show up in the world, right? Letting the world notice who we are. It doesn't have to be a person whose eye we want to catch. It could be, hey, world, I got rhythm, can't miss a beat, and I'm winking at you, and hey, world, I'm going to make you notice me. That could be one way to interpret this song. So I do love this song. And so let's go to the last portion of these lyrics in this song. And while we're pulling those up, where are you tuning in from? What do you think of this song? Do you feel the confidence and the swagger? Are you like excited to get your brass in pocket and wear your red leather jacket and help the world to notice you and be so reet? I love this song so much. I definitely love this song. So was that the last lyric sheet? That might have been. I thought there was one more, and that could be me making a, oh, let's see. Let me just check. All right. So she repeats in the song, there's no one else here, no one like me. I'm special, so special. Got to have some of your attention, give it to me. So she repeats those words to come up and command the attention that she loves and wants to embrace and feels like she deserves. And, you know, a lot of things about these songs that I love of the time is that for these women, Annie Lennox and Pat Benatar and Blondie, is it wasn't necessarily romantic or sexual. It was this undercurrent of like taking stock and appreciating your own confidence and your own value and your own worth and declaring it. And she did so, and they did so through their music, which was incredibly courageous, incredibly courageous. And so how many of you have taken stock of your arms, your legs, your fingers, your swagger, your sidestep, and really just said, hey, there's no one like me. I'm special. You know, not that you want to go and write a song about it, or maybe you do. Maybe you want to write a poem. But I think it's important that these songs help remember the time when women were trying to find their voice. Women were trying to become something more than objectified and sexualized, and were trying to find independence and strength and autonomy. And so for a 13-year-old girl, this was a very important song, a very important declaration of strength, autonomy, freedom, liberation. and that slice of badassery that we probably needed when we were coming from being shy and timid to, is this okay to be me, to being like, hell's yeah, I'm only going to be me. And so I think now is a fantastic time to revisit these words, this album, this song, and remember what was happening during that time, 1979 into 1980, and to really just be with the presence and the power of what was being imagined right before our very eyes with Brass in Pocket. Brass in Pocket. So what is your brass in pocket? What do you need to reclaim or re-own or reimagine about your strength and swagger? I am so glad that we had a chance to break this song down. I love this song for its fierceness and for the reminder of how badass the Pretenders were and how badass that time was, and that we were part of a transition in music that seamlessly occurred before our very eyes, and what that transition meant, and how it was our anthem, our MTV anthem of who we were becoming, and all that energy and confidence of teenage youth, longing, and angst. I love it. All right, so that's it. That's what I've got. I would love to hear your comments. And sometimes the way the stream has been is I haven't been able to see them in real time. I'm still trying to figure that out and working on that. But I promise I will answer. Feel free to leave comments if you enjoyed today's show. And again, if you feel so called to contribute, you can check out JanaLopez.com Vinyl Poetry Lounge and leave a tip. Otherwise, find your voice, find your swagger, get so reet. Be real and be neat. And I thank you so much for joining me tonight. Don't forget to keep the vinyl spinning and poetry flowing. Until next time, I'm your hostess, Jana Lopez. That was Brass in Pocket by the Pretenders. Thank you so much for being with me tonight. Thank you for joining me for this week's show of Vinyl Poetry Lounge. I'm your hostess, Jana Lopez. Keep your vinyl spinning and poetry flowing till we meet again next time.